we are going to wait until more people join us. I kind of don't give a warning as to when we're going to do this until we just go ahead and go live. So to make sure that the comments are working, please comment below where you're watching from, and we will get started. There is a lot to unpack from the hearing today. So Sarah was working around Salida today, so she didn't even get to hear what happened in the courtroom, so it will be a first time for her to kind of go over my notes. So yeah, it should be fun.
Looking forward to it. Heard some crazy things happened.
A lot happened today. So please tell us where you're watching from, and we will get started. I should get a water. Do you want a water?
Oh, I have mine.
I'm gonna get a Propel.
Okay.
That's okay.
Australia, Ohio, Tejas.
Oh, is this the last one?
Kentucky.
I'll take it.
Oh no, you're good. Go for it.
Sure.
Yeah. It's one less thing we have to take home.
So we decided to stay in Salida tonight because the roads are so bad. It's like a blizzard outside.
Australia, UK, Georgia.
On the way home from dinner, we actually saw someone that was pulling a sled on like the main street of Salida. I was like, this is so cool. There was like two little kids in this the. Okay, I can't open this.
Oh, bless your heart.
Sorry. Thank you. All right. It's been a long day. All right. Wow, Mexico, New Zealand. All right, let's get started. So there were a couple of people who took the stand today. Let's start off with the Chaffee County Sheriff's Detective Robin Burgess. So he kind of went over his history as far as how long he'd worked for the sheriff's office. He's worked since May of 2013. Since day one, he started working on the case, the Suzanne Morphew case. He investigated the bike scene. He spoke with witnesses. He worked on extensive interviews and excavating. So Iris Eaton questioned Detective Burgess, kind of asking him, like, any given week, like, how often are you working on the Suzanne Morphew case? And he said, like, between 20 to 80 hours a week, which is a huge chunk of his time. He said he only reviewed the very beginning of the affidavit because that's when, you know, he was first on scene when the bike was discovered. He was present when Morphew was arrested. He did talk briefly about he was there during the May 27th hearing where this was Barry Morphew's second appearance. So he was asked if he had looked at the order, specifically talking about the emails and texts that they're supposed to be handing over to defense in the discovery. And he said he hadn't looked over the entire order. He had kind of just given like a highlighted portion of the order. But he's, you know, talked to other investigators about it. And he didn't recall seeing the attachments from Alex Walker, the one who sent out the email saying, hey, we have to hand over the emails and text messages regarding this case. He also assists in like collecting the evidence. So he knows what they have and things like that. So whenever, like, let's say the district attorney's office is asking, hey, do we have this evidence? He knows about what they have and what they've logged and things like that. So when there was an issue with a lot of the media, as far as the technology, the defense was claiming they didn't get specifics on some of the audio or some of the interviews and things like that. He was the one that was able to hunt those evidence where it was. So they talked briefly about his conversations with the former ADA, Jeff Lindsay, about the issues with the evidence and the discovery and why they couldn't get some of the digital items and things like that. He talked about how, you know, he knew that they were supposed to hand over exculpatory information as well as, inculpatory information, which means stuff that shows that, their suspect, allegedly Barry Morphew, there was evidence that pointed to him as the suspect versus exculpatory information that led evidence that pointed to other suspects, if that makes sense. And that made any information that would pretty much say that Barry Morphew did not commit this crime. So they were supposed to hand over any and all pretty much evidence in this case. And that included emails and texts. And so he did testify that up to the preliminary hearing, he had produced 0 emails. And then just 2 weeks ago, he produced 120 emails to the defense. That's a significant amount. And this was from, one of the district attorney's office assistants, asking this to hand over this to this defense. Detective Burgess thought it had already been discovered, the contents of those emails. So that's why he says he didn't hand over those 120 emails, because he thought what was in those emails had already been handed to the defense, the contents, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was trying to hide the information. He was trying to explain on the stand. It was just that he had thought that the defense already got that information from previous other emails or other people. They talked a little bit about their weekly, regular task force meetings that they have to get everyone on the same page, and that means all the law enforcement agencies. You know that there was the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, CBI. There's multiple agencies from here to Indiana.
Yeah.
I mean, because Suzanne's originally, from Indiana, so they had to even speak to law enforcement there, as well as even in Broomfield, where Barry Morphew and some of his workers were working the weekend Suzanne went missing, Mother's Day weekend of 2020. So they just talked about, did you guys take notes? Is this in person? Is it over the phone? Who takes typically the notes? Is that recorded? Things like that. And they even said that these meetings are still going on. So these are a weekly meetings, kind of giving everyone in this investigation, because Suzanne is still not found. I mean, they're still searching for her. So that's kind of why they have these weekly meetings. And they also talked about this database where all of the different local and state and federal law enforcement agencies can kind of collaborate and have a database where all the information of all the evidence can be in one place. And I thought it was funny how Detective Burgess was it's not very user friendly. So he says he doesn't use that often because it's kind of hard for him, he said, to use it. It was created by CBI and it's called Smart Force. He did testify that Commander Walker collects the CBI emails, the text messages and the emails pertaining to this case. And then the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, deputies have brought their texts and emails and notes to the records department. And that's kind of how it gets filed. So remember, this is a motion that the defense has filed on discovery violations that, the defense claims the prosecution has done. They claim that, they haven't handed over all of the evidence in the time that they're supposed to, if that makes sense. But again, so much other things have happened today. I'm going to get to them. Just hang on. I'm going to try to go in the order of my notes so I don't jump around and you guys get confused. So they talked briefly about a letter that the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office as well as CBI received about this CODIS match which has been a huge topic of discussion in these hearings. And it's regarding the partial match to a suspect in a sexual assault unsolved case in Tempe, Arizona. And that's also linked to another sexual assault case in Phoenix, and then also Chicago. And so they got the CODIS match, which when you think of match, some people get confused because they think, oh, is that they actually know who the suspect is and that's the person? No. So a match means it's a potential lead to a suspect. It doesn't mean that they know who the suspect is. It's just a potential lead that they need to obviously follow and make sure that it either is something or is not something, and they need to, get to the bottom of. And so when there's a CODIS hit, that means they know that it is the person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this was a CODIS match, and it was a partial DNA match. So that could mean that it was like a cousin or, someone that's a relative to the person who committed the crime in Tempe, Arizona, or Phoenix, or, or Chicago. So Detective Burgess said that he was in charge of kind of following the Illinois. He followed up with the Illinois one. So he, talked to those detectives on that case. And then he said that, the Tempe, Arizona one was CBI agent or former CBI agent Joseph Cahill. We just learned yesterday that he, one of the lead CBI agents on this case, he just recently resigned from CBI on December 8th. A couple days prior to him resigning, his weapon was accidentally discharged in his home. So there is an internal investigation into him that the CBI is conducting. And so anyways, back to, he was supposed to be in charge of looking into the Tempe, Arizona match. And he said, I got this, don't worry about it. And so it sounded from Detective Burgess, they were like, okay, you got this, kind of a thing. And so they later found out that maybe they should have helped him in that, or they should have looked more into it. Yeah. And so he said today, let me get to the questioning from Iris Eaton, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm looking into my notes. Okay, Detective Burgess even said that the Phoenix match wasn't a priority, and they never received a call from Phoenix, which I thought was really shocking. They spoke about the letter dated, and the letter was dated May 19th. And remember, Barry Morphew got arrested May 5th. So this is like literally less than a week after Barry Morphew gets arrested, they get this letter about these DNA matches. And so Detective Burgess said he got the letter, but he was actually on vacation when he got it. So it was a couple days later when he actually saw it. He did remember exactly who he couldn't recall who he spoke with the district attorney's office in regards to this letter, because he said, quote, "We've had so many DAs since that time." So remember, the assistant district attorney, Jeff Lindsay, he resigned. He took a job in Pueblo. And then I think there's a couple more that have left as well. The letter identified that there are leads identified to an unknown partial profile of a man that was found on the glove box to Suzanne's Range Rover. This was a question, and it didn't look good. He said, Iris Eaton questioned this detective. He's, whose decision was it to not follow up on the Phoenix match? And the detective said it slipped through the cracks, which you don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
You want to have
Nothing should slip through the cracks.
Yeah, especially on such a big case. And then obviously since May 19th, this detective has said, we have looked into this more so than at the beginning around. And remember, this is before, or when they were investigating these DNA hits, or not hits, matches, the partial profile of a man unknown, in possibly Phoenix and Tempe, Arizona, and Illinois. They said this was during the preliminary hearing. And so there was a lot going on in the courtroom as well as outside looking into these potential matches. They did briefly mention, this was really interesting. They said that this is Iris Eaton talking, and she said that, there's this unknown male DNA on the bike helmet, handlebars, step in the house, in the Morphew house, next to one of the beds. And for me, I've been in the courtroom, you've been in the courtroom. It was our first time to hear that there was some type of unknown male DNA in the home.
Because the only ones they focused on was the one on the glove box, and that's the one they've really been harping on. Mm-hmm. But clearly there was a whole bunch of other stuff too.
But right after this was said in the courtroom, there was this weird bench conference, which means they needed to address someone that was in the courtroom, and they wanted to talk about something that happened yesterday involving the WebEx being hacked. And so the prosecution didn't get to talk about that, and there was no more questioning about the potential, the potential unknown male DNA. I mean, I guess it's not potential. I mean, she said there was unknown male DNA on, we knew about the bike helmet. We knew about the bike cushion. We knew about the handlebars. We knew about the glove box. But this whole thing about the DNA on the step in the home and next to one of the beds, and it's we don't know what step in the house or which bed. Is it the master bedroom? Is it one of the guest rooms? Is it one of the daughter's rooms? So that was kind of left in the air, and we didn't get to know more because there was this bench conference where everyone in the courtroom had to leave. They had just a conversation with the attorneys and one other person in the courtroom. And we left for about 10 minutes and then came back. And then court proceedings continued. And the Judge Ramsey Lama, was supposed to talk at the very end of today about what came about from yesterday's WebEx hack, because he did say, I do have an update from our IT guys, and I'll give you guys that information at the very end. And then there was so many other things that happened today that we kind of we forgot about it, I guess. I don't know. So anyways, he did talk about two major things right after we got back. So Detective Burgess was on the stand, and then all of a sudden it got disrupted. And then he was supposed to be back on the stand when everyone came back into the courtroom, and then he wasn't, because they wanted to talk about two other motions that had been filed. One was the bond motion, the modification of the bond. And then the other was about a motion filed by the CBS, the national CBS affiliate. The CBS one was releasing exhibits, including audio and video, that was presented during the preliminary hearing. So that means you were in the preliminary hearing for some of it.
Yeah.
We saw body cam video of
Them finding the bike.
Yes.
Going in the home.
When Barry first got to the scene.
Yep.
When one of the girl's sons first was on scene,
Boyfriend.
and he was the civilian that first
Her
got
boyfriend.
there. Yes, yeah.
Not her son.
Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah. One of Macy's, it was Macy's boyfriend, got on scene, and then when they first discovered the bike, like what you said, so that video and some of the interviews that Barry Morphew gave to investigators, that was also presented, and we heard audio of that. And so some of the audio and video is supposed to be released.
Is it just strictly the stuff, though, that was included in the prelims?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So just the stuff that was, but that was a lot.
Yeah.
Remember the prelim was 4 days? That was
Very long.
That was a long. That was a lot of obviously new evidence. We had never seen any of that.
Yep.
And both sides, the state and the defense, had no issue with that. And then also, so we don't know. We Fox 21, our station, we have sent a request to get those. Mm-hmm. We're not sure exactly when we'll be able to get that. We're gonna try to again tomorrow to see if we can get that, and I'll put together. If it is released tomorrow, we'll put a story together about it.
Yeah.
And we'll have that on our website, fox21news.com. The other thing that was really major, this is before lunchtime, was the judge did modify the motion, or so that the girls, Mallory and Macy, so that Barry can visit the girls, which they live in Gunnison, which is a different county. It's just the county next to Chaffee County. Because right now, or prior to this...
just to clarify, too, because somebody asked, when you guys see video of us showing them, like, walking in, Macy has the very dark hair, and then Mallory has kind of like a lighter brown, but Macy has the very like dark, almost black colored hair.
Yeah.
Just so you know which one's which.
So the judge said we got to talk about this bond modification. So he says that the girls have sent a letter to the court, but they also want to make a statement. And mind you, this is the first time we are hearing from
anything
the girls since Suzanne went missing in May of 2020. And so it was a big deal. It was a really big deal because, there was that big search in September, and they still didn't make a comment. And, even when Barry got arrested, they didn't make a comment. I mean, we see them walking in and out of the courtroom every time Barry Morphew's in court. They don't say anything. I've asked them questions, but they don't really say anything. I see them, smiling and sometimes crying and hugging their father, and they're very much in support of him. But this is the first time we've actually heard from them. I put the entire quote that Mallory Morphew made. Macy Morphew, the youngest daughter, did not make a statement. It was just Mallory who spoke at the podium in front of everyone. She said something like, it was such a blessing for our dad to be able to come visit us in Gunnison. And she was explaining, because of their work schedule and because of, driving over the pass in the wintertime, it's very difficult for either them to go over to Chaffee County to see their dad. So it would be really amazing for them to be able to have him visit them. And she said that it has been a hard and confusing time for them. They've been struggling. She said something like, they've had a lot of grief and sadness during this time. She said that, we are a family and we need each other, and it'd be a blessing for us to be a family and be together in the town over. And she was very emotional, and so was Barry when this happened. The entire family, even Macy was too. Macy had, I believe at one point, had her arm around Mallory. After she made the statement, Mallory, they both sat back down behind Barry, and the judge, decided yes, to change the bond modification. And when that was made, Barry said out loud, "Thank you," and was crying. Iris Eaton, his attorney, was also made a note saying, like, Barry Morphew hasn't been any issues with the GPS monitor system that he's had. So if you remember, when he was he paid $500,000, $500,000 to get out on bond, and he also has to be required to wear an ankle monitor. And that ankle monitor kind of tracks where he is. He lives actually near where they used to live in Maysville.
It's really just to make sure he doesn't leave Chaffee County.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part.
So, and, Iris Eaton testifies saying, that he hasn't broken any of the rules that he's supposed to be following. And the prosecution obviously got to have a response, and they said, we have victims have wrote a letter saying that they don't agree with the modification, and it didn't matter. The judge made the decision, and Barry Morphew is allowed now to go to Gunnison to visit his daughters, which really meant a lot to the girls and to Barry. One of the deputies even brought tissues to the girls because they were crying a lot when this was made, when this decision was made. Okay, so those two decisions were made. Then, Detective Burgess was put back on the stand, and they talked again about the Tempe match from the glove box of Suzanne Morphew's Range Rover. And they talked a little bit about how there was a connection from the Tempe to the Phoenix one as well. Is it hot in here, or is it just the light?
It's probably a combination.
Oh, just got really hot. Sorry. He did mention that he did talk with Joseph Cahill a little bit about the work he had done following up on the Tempe match, but he didn't write up a report. So,
Turn the heat down.
okay, thank you.
I turned it up earlier when it was snowing.
Okay. We knew this yesterday, but since August, so after the preliminary hearing, Agent Cahill was let go on working on the Morphew case. And, Iris Eaton asked Detective Burgess if he knew why that was. Like, why was the timing so strange as far as right after the preliminary hearing, this agent got, kind of let go from working on the Morphew case? And Detective Burgess said, I don't know why. He just knew that he was no longer working, as well as he knew recently that he was no longer working for CBI. From, I believe it was a testimony from yesterday, we learned that Cahill was moved from working with the Morphew case and then getting taken off in August after the prelim hearing and moving to the marijuana unit within CBI, and then he was resigned on December, I think it was 9th. And now they're kind of the defense is waiting to get the internal affairs documents and investigation to kind of learn more as far as is CBI agent or former CBI agent Cahill, how credible is he as a witness to this case? Because he did work so much in the beginning and parts of the arrest affidavit, the beginning of it, Cahill wrote and helped with. And so the defense really wants to know what's in that IA. Did I say that right? Investigated affairs investigation. Yeah. Anyways,
Where is it?
the Internal Affairs investigation IA. Ow, my foot. So, Detective Burgess pretty much said, Agent Cahill was supposed to take care of the CODIS match. And then Iris Eaton asked, was it discussed amongst law enforcement that you guys were all upset after Cahill testified in regards to the preliminary hearing? And Detective Burgess said, yeah, I do remember there was frustration. And he said, I believe it was surrounded around, that he testified to something or didn't testify to something is what he said. He wasn't specific as to what the frustrations were. He was kind of more generic. And Iris Eaton questioned him saying, did you hear that he knew a lot more about the Tempe match and didn't testify to that? And Detective Burgess said, yeah, that sounds about right. And then they switched gears and talked about the HP laptop, talking about kind of what's on the laptop, the summary, and the image of the laptop, and Iris Eaton was kind of saying, the image itself wasn't produced to the defense. And I don't think Detective Burgess knew this. Then they talked about the protection order. So after Barry Morphew was released on a $500,000 bond, there was a list of all these potential witnesses to this case, family, friends, family members of Suzanne's that are on a protective order. And Iris Eaton questioned Detective Burgess as far as did you talk to any of those individuals? And he said, over the course of the investigation, I spoke with Melinda Moorman, Sheila Oliver, Jean and Martin Ritter, Brad Oswald, Cassidy Cordova, Morgan Gentile. And then she was specifically asking, did you talk to those individuals about the protection order? And he goes, no, it was more so Commander Alex Walker because he was in charge of that. So then that was kind of the end of Iris Eaton questioning this witness. And then there was cross-examination, and the prosecution asked Detective Burgess, even though you didn't see the court orders and you read every single word, you still followed it. And, Burgess was like, yes. He asked, specifically, did you keep notes? And he said, yes. He said, did Jeff Lindsay ever tell you to keep those notes? And he said, yes, he did. And I had kept them prior to that. So he talked a little bit about the meetings that they have regularly, about did you ever make a written report from those meetings? He said yes. But he said as of December of 2020, there was no new info from those meetings. I guess they had already, I'm not exactly sure what that means. The prosecution asked again about the CODIS letter, kind of, when did he get it? And he said he forwarded that the email with the details on, and it sounded like the victim in the Tempe case was walking into a convenience store, was abducted and raped, is what Detective Burgess testified to. And he said that CBI agent Cahill contacted the detective and followed up on it. And then he said that he also followed up on it later. And according to Detective Burgess, CBI agent Cahill asked the detective in Tempe, Arizona, if Barry Morphew looked like their suspect in that case. And I guess that Tempe detective said no. And again, Cahill got the reports of this DNA match in August of 2021, around the same time the prelim happened. Are you reading the questions? Is there any questions that I can answer while we're talking about Detective Burgess?
Not really, no. Everyone's just kind of commenting on the daughters and just how they feel that Barry's pretty much going to get away with it.
I did already talk about that.
Some people were asking yesterday too. Shoshona Dark E was not there yesterday or today, just in case anybody was curious.
Yeah, the only ones in the courtroom that are like relatives to Barry Morphew, or at least that I know of is friends with Barry Morphew, was just his daughters.
Yeah.
Like his mother and sister weren't there.
Yeah.
They haven't been here the last 2 days. Sorry, I needed water or something. So after Burgess said that he kind of followed every lead with the Chicago-Illinois match, because that was kind of what he was assigned to, he started working on other things in this complicated case. So Eaton started asking him, you know, how many murder cases have you actually worked on in your career? And he goes, this is actually his second homicide investigation. And he, you know, Iris Eaton started questioning him as far as the first homicide, like, was there a body? Was there physical evidence? And he goes, yes, there was a body and there was physical evidence. And, you know, she asked him, like, have you ever been involved with a sexual assault case involving CODIS? And he goes, yeah, I've worked on a handful of cases like that. And, you know, she asked as far as like, is that alarming when there's a CODIS match? And he goes, yes. Is it, and then she followed up saying, is it pretty important to follow up on that lead? And he goes, yes. And then she said, you know, was that a thorough investigation in the Tempe match when Cahill investigated? And he kind of said no. And then she goes, what about in early August? And then he said, since then, it has been followed up on, is what he pretty much said. Then they called, so Detective Burgess got off the stand, and then the next witness that the defense called was Martin Scott Ritter, which, for those that don't know who that is, you've met him. Mm-hmm. He was really, really sweet.
Yeah.
And Jean Ritter, his wife, was also in the courthouse. She wasn't in the courtroom. Only Martin Ritter took the stand today.
Oh, okay.
But this is the first time we're hearing from some individuals that were there from day one. Were first alerted to Suzanne missing. Yeah. And Martin Ritter, he's the one who called 911 and alerted authorities to Suzanne missing. He had told us that he called the non-emergency number for a welfare check on Suzanne Morphew. And, you know, the Iris Eaton starts questioning him, like, how long have you known the Morphews and what's your relationship with them? And Martin Ritter was like, we've known them since they moved to Colorado, which was in the spring of 2018. He says that he's the president of the HOA in their like little neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so it's like a small development in Maysville. There's a lot of like rental vacation properties there. And there's like only a few people that are actually like full-time residents there. Yeah. He said that, you know, they would see each other at their houses. They had a friendship together. he said, I called 911 about Suzanne's disappearance because of the concern from Barry Morphew and the girls. So it sounds like he had multiple conversations, or his wife had multiple conversations with either Barry or Mallory and Macy. The morning of, or not the morning, the day of May 10th, 2020. He said that his communication, they maintained their communication since that day. But Iris Eaton did question him as far as like from that day until now, like what has your communication been like since then? And he said, I guess since May 10th, the daughters, or he said the girls' cell phone numbers had changed, and so their communication with the Ritters had been cut off. And Barry did eventually give him his cell phone number, but he said, quote, "It's been minimal communication at best." There was testimony yesterday from former Assistant District Attorney Jeff Lindsay that, he had told the court that Martin Ritters, or the Ritters, had told him that they thought that Barry Morphew was the one who committed this crime and the alleged crime, and that they were fearful of their life. And so the questions that proceed are all about that. So I kind of just wanted to give that information as far as before I start telling you guys what this questioning, how this kind of came to be. There's a backstory. So Iris Eaton asked him, was there ever an incident that occurred that you, kind of thought, that Barry Morphew threatened him, or that Martin Ritter was fearful of your life or whatever? And he said no. And then she says, did you ever tell anyone that you were threatened or scared? And he said no. But he then said, I have a high level of concern. And then she was questioning him and said, did you tell anyone you felt threatened or scared? And then he said, wife and some law enforcement. He said, obviously I've told my wife and then some law enforcement because we were asking for a restraining order against Barry Morphew. And then she goes, do you know what law enforcement member you spoke with? And he said, no. He said, I've spoke with the Chaffey County Sheriff's Office, CBI, FBI. They've all interviewed us multiple times. Because their testimony is crucial, because it was the early on into the investigation. Yeah. They were they were kind of dragged into this by,
because Gene Ritter's the one that went to the house. So
yeah, Gene Ritter. There. Yeah, his wife was the one that went to the house, and he was the one. They must have been communicating to each other.
Yeah,
I don't know. But again, this is the first time we're hearing from the Ritters. Mm-hmm. They were not in the preliminary hearing. Yep. They did not testify in that. He mentioned that he probably spoke with Commander Alex Walker on the phone about him being fearful of Barry Morphew, or felt threatened or scared. And, Iris Eaton asked him, like, does he remember if Jeff Lindsay was on the phone about this? He's like, I don't know, He said it was after the fact that we requested a protective order that there was a list of people. So he was questioned as far as, like, did you know that there was a list of people that were also wanting a protective order? And he said, no, it was after the fact when he had asked for one. And then he also told the court that he learned of the list when he learned that Barry Morphew was moving into the Cushman property nearby when he got out of jail. Yep. And that was in late September. Iris Eaton said, did you ever tell law enforcement about your beliefs, whether or not Barry Morphew committed the acts he is accused of? And then the state objected, And I believe it was sustained. So this was interesting. So the state objected, and Eaton wanted to respond in chambers. So that meant there was technical issues in the courtroom today. Usually they have like this white noise where like the attorneys can go up and talk to the judge and no one can hear what's being said.
It pretty much just sounds like a loud fuzz.
Yeah, but because they've been having technical difficulties, they couldn't. So we all had to get out of courtroom, including Mr. Ritter. And so I don't know what they discussed. That's, whatever happened. And then we were brought back in. And then Ritter was able to answer that question. He said no. He said, it's highly probable, I assume, but for a conclusion, I would have to wait. Oh, what is my conception of? So he said no. And then they talked about, like, when did your opinion change about Barry Morphew, because they were friends, and he said after he read the affidavit. And, they questioned him, like, did law enforcement provide this affidavit for you, or the DA's office? And he said, no, I read it online. No one from the prosecution sent it to him. And he said, he talked about how there was overwhelming... he talked also about how, besides reading the affidavit, he said that his conception of Mr. Morphew had changed after reading the affidavit, as well as the actions. Mm-hmm. And so Iris Eaton questioned him as like, what do you mean by actions? And he goes like, his overwhelming lack of emotion and his repetitive actions about the disappearance of his wife. And the defense is like, okay, you gotta like explain yourself, kind of a thing. And he said that he talked about how during the early weeks after Suzanne went missing, a lot of the family members and family members' friends came out to search for Suzanne, and they had kind of their own search party, and Barry Morphew was kind of the lead of that search party. He had this speech that he would give every morning to kind of give people, I don't know, just to give people some encouragement, a word of encouragement or something before they went out and search. And he said there were up to like 30 people at their house. There was a search plan in the morning, and they would report back in the evening and start a plan for the next day. And during that time, people would talk. And on several occasions, Barry Morphew would give this speech, and Mr. Ritter kind of explained that this speech was, in retrospect, was like the same every single day. Mm-hmm. Day after day. And he said it never changed. And they asked him kind of like, what was that speech? It was like, I really, love my wife. She's been the love of my life all my life, kind of a thing. I miss her so much. That was kind of the repetitiveness of the speech. They asked him, Mr. Ritter, if any one of the law enforcement members ever influenced him as far as his opinion about Barry Morphew and about the case. And he said, no one in any agencies tried to influence me or pressure me in any matter to change my mind on anything. And this is the state asking him these questions. And he said, what about the defense? And he said, the defense team has an investigator named Rachel that has called me several times. To me, she pretended to be our friend to open the door to get me to talk. She wouldn't take no for an answer. For what me and my wife, we were fine to talk to defense or prosecution as long as the defense wanted to talk. we wanted the prosecution to be there. So he's saying he wanted transparency and he wanted everyone to be on the same page. So if the defense wanted to talk with him, he just wanted the prosecution to also be there at the same time, so that everyone was on the same page and that no one was being left out of the conversation. And he said that the defense wouldn't respond to that request, and the prosecution asked, let's just set up a time and date and we can make this happen. He said that after reading the affidavit, Mr. Ritter said it made them feel more uncomfortable. It was a way for us to provide some separation between us and Barry Morphew in regards to Mr. Ritter. I guess when Barry Morphew was in jail, they felt like it gave them some separation. Yeah. And then the state asked the Ritters, how does it feel to have the defendant living in the same neighborhood? Which a lot of people, whenever we learned that Barry Morphew was living in the Cushman house, which is like not that far from where the Morphews used to live in Maysville. Ritter said, this is a quote, not very good. It made me very uncomfortable and made my wife more uncomfortable. We put in a security system, window coverings. We recorded any activity in HOA that would put us in close proximity to Barry Morphew. So that means taking out the trash. And I believe it was Alex Walker's testimony. that he had said that one time the Ritters had called him to see if he could take out the trash. They didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So one of the investigators came to take out the Ritters' trash because they didn't want to
run into him or anything.
Yeah, and disobey the protection order. And someone, the state asked Mr. Ritter, is it fair to say that you felt threatened? And he said yes. Did you tell law enforcement that you felt threatened? Did you tell DA's office? And he goes, I know it was the county sheriff, and I don't know if Mr. Lindsay was involved in that. He might have been, is what he said. So in redirect, the defense asked him, when did you read the arrest affidavit? And he said it was probably the first part of September when he read the affidavit. And it took him several days. He didn't just sit down and read the whole thing because it is 129 pages.
It's a lot.
I don't know how many days it took you to read it.
2.
Oh.
I was very invested.
Oh. Well, it's better than me. I think it took me multiple days. Anyways, they asked him, it took him 3 to 4 days to read the affidavit, and that it caused a fear for Barry Morphew, according to Mr. Ritter, that, he was responsible to, in doing this. And, in redirect, the defense asked him, have you told anyone about your beliefs? Mm-hmm. And he said, I have not made any statement that I know that I directly said, he did this or whatever, or, I did this, or, then they asked him, was there ever a 3-way call with Mr. Lindsay? They said no. Then, Eton was reading text messages between Mr. Ritter and, one of their private investigators about setting up a time to chat with everyone. And the time when they were asking about this was when Martin and his wife were in Nebraska on vacation, and they didn't have great service, and so they were trying to set it up for later in the week when they got back. And the defense also asked, can you describe those searches, the speeches during the initial couple of days of the search? And he said it was either at the Ritter's home when Barry Morphew would make these speeches, or at the Cushmans, according to Martin. And he was saying this is how we met. She's the love of my life, and I don't know what I'm going to do without her. He said this at least 2 times, if not more, in the speeches that he gave every morning, according to Mr. Ritter. So I remember we were trying to figure out, like, in that original search crew that Barry Morphew had kind of set up with family and friends, kind of where did they search, so that when we were doing the stories prior to the big search with hundreds of people coming, that they wouldn't retrace the same tracks that this original search did. Yeah. But we never really got that answer, did we? No. Those speeches that I guess Barry Morphew gave were about 10 minutes, according to Martin Ritter. And the gist was just about how much he missed his wife and that he wanted to find her. So now they started talking about the pretrial publicity violations. So this is a motion that the defense filed really against mostly Linda Stanley, the district attorney. And they kind of took off the contempt part of this motion, that she was going to be held in contempt if found that she was doing these violations. And the defense kind of agreed that the contempt part is excluded out of this. They said it was not necessary or sufficient. And the defense said that the last time they think that allegedly DA Stanley was doing doing violations of the pretrial publicity order made by Judge Patrick Murphy, they thought was early November of 2021. But this is, again, months after the order had been filed by Judge Patrick Murphy in June. What are some questions? Can you read? Or have you been reading them? Or no?
A little bit, yeah. A lot of people are just kind of commenting on things.
Okay. Okay. So the defense is pretty much saying that DA Stanley made multiple comments about this case, about Barry Morphew, on podcasts, YouTube, to the media, when she knew well that she wasn't supposed to make comments that could be prejudice to the person that they are, have this case against, Barry Morphew. And the prosecution said that, if the court does find that there has been violations made, then they believe that the court can remedy those. And so, sorry, I'm reading my notes back for the first time. So in court today, we saw multiple clips of Linda Stanley either talking. The first one was a clip from the press conference after Barry Morphew got arrested on May 5th of 2021. And that was before the order of the pretrial publicity. So I'm not I don't know. We were all talking, some of the people that were in the courtroom were talking about, like, they didn't understand why that was even presented.
Somebody just said they watched her on Profiling Evil and she didn't even discuss the Barry Morphew case.
Oh, that was a big part of what happened today. They played multiple clips from Linda Stanley being on the podcast Profiling Evil. the judge really didn't like that a DA for 11th Judicial District is even going on a show that's titled what the podcast is titled. And then they played one of our clips. We interviewed Linda Stanley and a couple of the other district attorneys. It was the last day of the preliminary hearing, wasn't it? August 24th, I think.
One of the last days.
It had to have been the last day. And like when we interviewed them, they like a lot of the questions were off limits that we asked.
Yeah. They were very, very strict about what we couldn't ask, and it was more just we had to be as vague as humanly possible, like just in cases in general. How does this happen? Where do you start when you get evidence like this type thing? Like we weren't really
asking specifics about this case. I mean, we did ask questions that had already been presented in the prelim that were public knowledge.
Yeah.
But a lot of the questions they wouldn't answer.
Yeah.
I remember like having to rephrase questions and things like that.
And she was very quick to shut it down too. It's not like they all kind of looked at each other like, oh, should we do this? It was an immediate, we can't talk about that.
And all of the prosecution was present during that interview. We had like four of them sitting around a round table so that they could check each other and make sure that no one was speaking out of...
And like certain people would answer certain questions, so it wasn't just Linda Stanley doing a solo interview with us. It was just kind of all of them taking turns talking about different aspects of just a case in general and how it works.
Mm-hmm. There was like a lot of also just like articles that I guess Linda Stanley had made comments to in regards to like the former assistant district attorney, Jeff Lindsay, resigning. She had made a comment about how we have other great members on our team that will put Barry Morphew behind bars. And they thought that was, the judge didn't like that comment either. Let me get to where, I'm trying to find in my notes the judge's decision on this. Sorry. Oh, and it's important to note also that District Attorney Linda Stanley was not in the courtroom today. Mm-hmm. And she hasn't been yesterday. I don't think she's been in the courtroom since the preliminary hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is. Sorry. Finally. Okay. So there was one part of the Profiling Evil podcast that was dated August 30th where I guess District Attorney Linda Stanley was explaining why she was dressed in the attire she was dressed in during the press conference. And she explained that like she slept maybe 4 hours or something like that the night before Barry Morphew's arrest. And they woke up super early to like stake out his where he was living, and I guess his normal routine was different that day. And so she was saying that she could have slept in and she could have worn something different, but that's kind of just what she wore that day. And I do remember looking over and looking at the daughters, and I remember Macy was just like shaking her head when that was being discussed. I guess also Linda Stanley reacted to some comments on the podcast in like a blog form, or like in this, maybe she responded to some people's comments about, and the defense says that she was sharing her opinions about Barry Morphew. I guess there was a YouTuber Another Day in the Car with Jules that she also did the same thing, like responding to people's comments. And there was a podcast saying, like, I got this, and gave comment about the AA, the arrest affidavit, saying that he was possibly going to flee in regards to Barry Morphew was possibly going to flee. And the defense was saying, like, she was talking about facts of the case that were not in the evidence, according to the defense, is what they were saying. She said that, Linda Stanley was giving thumbs up comments during these podcasts and, like, when people would comment. The defense said that Linda also talked about how many helmets that Suzanne had at one point in one of the comments. I guess they said that the most concerning comment from an article was when Jeff Lindsay resigned, and she had said something like, Lindsay knew the Morphew case very well, but there are other members on the team that are determined to put Morphew behind bars. And you got to remember that the preliminary publicity, what am I trying to say?
Oh God, where are you going?
I'm trying to find that part where it mentions it. Sorry. I'm scrolling too much in my notes. The pre-trial publicity order made by Judge Patrick Murphy was made on June 3rd. And a lot of these, like, YouTube videos and podcasts and comments that allegedly Linda Stanley had made was after June 3rd. And so that's what the defense really had an issue with. At one point in one of the podcasts, she said that she described in court that, like, when Barry Morphew was staring her down, she was staring back, if that makes sense. And she said that she was surprised he was shorter than her. The one about the press conference that the defense had an issue was when District Attorney Linda Stanley said that Barry refused to speak without a lawyer. That was the statement they didn't like.
Why?
I don't know. I didn't understand that one fully.
Why would that, what?
Yeah, because that's like...
Why would that bother them?
Yeah.
She's just simply stating a fact that Barry had said something.
The defense also claimed that Linda Stanley made comments on the DNA, and that she made comments that Barry Morphew's guilty, which is explicitly forbidden for, a district attorney to do, according to the defense. And the judge favored the defense on this. I mean, he ruled on behalf of them, saying that he, after looking at the video, listening to podcasts and other things that the defense had presented today, the judge ruled in favor of the defense and said that, yes, the district attorney's office, the district attorney's office did violate this pretrial publicity order that Judge Patrick Morphew had put into place June 3rd. Murphy. Did I say the other thing? Okay. Yep. Okay. The defense also talked about how, like, in this day and age, like, when we do a video or, someone does a podcast, it's out there, and it's out there for a long time. And they talked about how, like, there was, like, one of the podcasts where Linda Stanley was on had, like, more than 30,000 views. Mm. But the state was saying, like, it happened 5 months, a long time ago. People are going to forget by the time the trial is going to roll around. Yeah. And the defense was like, well, not necessarily. You can whip out your phone and look it up and Google it, and you can find it again. Like, it lives online. It's really hard for things in this day and age to
disappear.
Yes.
Completely.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm reading my comments. Is there any comments or questions about this? About the pretrial publicity violation?
No, I guess some people are talking about what the girls are wearing.
Oh.
Some people were agreeing, though. I guess they had either watched or listened to some of the things that Linda had said in...
I don't know why Linda Stanley isn't coming to these court proceedings.
But some people were agreeing that she was liking comments and saying some of those things. So I don't know if they listened to the podcast or what, but they were just agreeing with it.
Mm.
Someone's asking, what do you think happened to Trevor Noel?
Great question. It will be interesting the day he comes to court.
Someone's also asking what happens with that violation with Stanley.
Yeah, so great question, and I will get to that. So after that violation, the judge ruled that there was indeed violations. We had like a quick break. We actually had our lunch break at like 1:30, I think, today. They came back and they kind of wanted to hear from the defense as far as what they would want the sanctions to be. First, the defense was like, we want this case to be dismissed. and if not, then we have four other things that we would want the court to do. Let me get to those. Oh, before I get to that, sorry, let me backtrack. I do want to explain kind of what the state defended Linda Stanley and talked about. They said that they kind of went through everything that the defense had presented and was like, how is that prejudice of the defendant? You know, the DA explaining what evidence is direct and circumstantial. How is that prejudice to the defendant?
People are also asking how, like, her whole position is to prove that he's guilty, so why is her saying it on a podcast bad if her whole job is to prove that?
Mm-hmm. And that was kind of, he's even said, like, talking about the article where she was kind of like pumping up her prosecution team, saying like, even though we lost Jeff Lindsay to another county, I am confident in my team that we're going to get the job that we're hired to do done. And so the prosecution today was like, we're prosecutors. We are supposed to prosecute. That's what we do. We put people in jail. And so that's kind of how they defended that statement in the article. So they went like every single podcast and was like, how is, staring down Barry Morphew prejudice to the defendant? And they just went down everything that, the defense was saying that District Attorney Linda Stanley did wrong.
Yeah.
So let's now go to what the judge said.
Also, real quick, with all the podcasts and, like, even our video, is that not something the court could just, like, demand be taken down?
I don't think so. I mean,
I don't know how that works, if she actually gets charged with something or anything like that for being a
well, they weren't
violation.
going after contempt. They were just wanting to alert the courts, and also they wanted sanctions.
Gotcha.
So the judge said, I can certainly understand why you filed this motion. This rule is to protect the constitutional rights of the defendant and the state, but mostly the defendant, which may have a tendency to affect the trial. He expects the order to be followed when there is a court order, and if not, then it's meaningless. And so he said, what I heard violates the June 3rd order to limit pre-trial publicity. He said not every statement violated this, but numerous statements did. So he wasn't totally agreeing with everything the defense was presenting in regards to District Attorney Linda Stanley. He was just saying numerous statements did. And he did give a couple of those, and he did give examples of the ones he thought that did violate the order. I guess there was a comment that Linda Stanley made on a podcast regarding, I guess, Morphew wanting to flee. The judge said this is unnecessary. It impugns Barry Morphew's credibility. The staring down comment, the judge said it's just unprofessional. I'm not sure what to think about that. It might prejudice the people that's in the audience watching that podcast. He again stated that, like, in those comments made in the podcast specifically, he said something like, I don't see that every comment that Linda Stanley made didn't follow the order. But he made it very known in court today that the podcast name he had an issue with, the title, Profiling Evil, is accusing whatever they're talking about as evil, guilty. He said, I find that appearing on the podcast titled Profiling Evil, it goes directly to guilt, and it is prejudicial. I can't say that.
Prejudicial.
Thank you. Towards the defense. These statements stay online forever. It's been viewed over 22,000 times. He did agree with some of the state's arguments, saying that it does over time dissipate as far as the, people kind of forgetting about it.
Yeah. Doesn't hold the same weight.
But he also said it's readable. It's like
readily.
Yeah, it's readily
readily accessible.
Thank you. I need to go to bed. It's been a long day. Because you can just get a phone out of your pocket and look it up. Now to, like, what you could say the punishment, if you want to say that, the sanctions. So at first, they said, the defense really just wanted this case to be dismissed. And the judge was like, no, that's too extreme. So then the defense had 4 other things that they wanted. The first one was the ballot case.
The voting fraud?
Yes. They wanted, didn't want that to be coming into this case. So they didn't want anything about that case to come into the murder case. And then the second request was that they wanted, instead of having a select few of Barry Morphew's statements from the 40 interviews that he had done with investigators, they wanted all of his statements be in the trial. And they wanted to have the trial length extend. Now, some of these motions we have not, the judge has not ruled on. So you just have to take that in consideration. So these are just motions that they wanted the court to just go ahead and grant them. The third one was the change of venue. And the fourth was about a witness in California. I guess one of his sons had tested positive for COVID this week, and they wanted to see if he could just testify over WebEx, which is less expensive for Morphew to pay for him to fly out here, or just have him on WebEx. And the state was like, we don't care. Yes, have him on WebEx. It's easier we don't want to get COVID, kind of a thing. Like, they're like, it's okay. So the court granted to have this witness appear on WebEx. But as to all of the other requests, the court denied like all of them. So we still have to hear about all those motions on February 1st, which is the next hearing for Barry Morphew, which is Tuesday of next week. So the outright dismissal, the judge was like, that is extreme, and that request was immediately denied. And then all of the other requests, he just was like, we want to hear it on the merit, and we, he just was like, no. So there wasn't really any sanctions after the district attorney's office violated the order. The defense said that they, for right now, haven't seen anything that the DA has done or said since, like, I think October or November of 2020. So it's been a while. So then we talked about the statement in regards to this other case that Barry Morphew has about voting for Suzanne Morphew. And the statement is, I knew she was going to vote for Trump. And this is the people's motion. So the prosecution filed this motion, and they want this statement to be used in the trial. Mm-hmm. And they say that it shows his consciousness of guilt. If Suzanne is missing, or the prosecution was saying that the statement, I knew she was going to vote for Trump, it shows that he thought that Suzanne was not around and that she's dead. And the prosecution said the jury can confer that. The prosecution said that he knew when he said that statement, and also filed the ballot he mailed it in, which was in, I believe, October of 2020, 5 months after she was reported missing. The prosecution was claiming that, Suzanne, he was pretty much saying that she's gone, she's not coming back. And that goes against consciousness of guilt. And the prosecution was saying the only person who could say that would be the person who killed her. That's where they're leaping. And the defense wants the court to take into account the 40 hours of interviews that Barry Morphew did with law enforcement, and whether he talked about something like this at a different time. He said that the 7-word statement, he left the signature line for the voter blank, and he signed the witness guardian line. And she said it in a way, the defense's attorney who kind of rebutted this motion, she was explaining that, like, if I go to the store, let's say, and buy a chicken from the grocery store, I know my husband loves the chicken, so I'm just going to get it for him. That's what she was trying to say in regards to this. That's kind of why he did what he did. And she said there's no proof of death, and that's the issue. And that's what the prosecution has to prove to the jury. That not only is Suzanne dead, but Barry Morphew did it.
Yep.
And so, so they were saying that there's all these tests that the judge would have to analyze or whatever, and it doesn't fall into that. So anyways, the judge said that the date is very important as to when the ballot was casted, and it was 5 months after Suzanne went missing. And the court didn't find it relevant. So what this means is that that statement is not going to be able to be presented in this trial. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
People are saying, too, that regardless if she was alive or not, A, it's illegal to vote for somebody else, but the defense is wanting, you know, proof of death, and that's not there, but there's also no proof of life either.
The judge also say making that logical leap that the comment is knowledge that Suzanne is dead is a leap, is what the judge said. So that statement will not be produced in trial. Oh, look at my comment where I said, and after this happened, all of a sudden, there was like a disruption in court. Eton.
Is it over a cord?
No.
Because I know that was the thing. And then
her other. This is what happened. So Eton fell. She was like trying to sit back down in her seat, and one of the other defense counsels pulled the chair from her. And as she was like trying to sit down, and I don't know if it was Barry caught her like with his arm because he was sitting right there.
Yeah.
Or if the person who pulled out the chair like caught her. Anyways, and it was funny. I mean, everyone laughed, but she was like, I'm okay. Anyways, so then they talked about the change of venue. Sorry, we're almost done. I know we've talked and talked and talked. We're almost done. It's been a really long life.
I know.
Okay, this is huge. They both. The state and the defense talked about this change of venue. The defense talked about the ties to the extensive media coverage that this case has brought, and they said it wouldn't be fair to try this case here in Chaffee County. So according to the defense, they did an informal survey in Chaffee County, and they tried to survey 200 people in Chaffee County. And they claim it was hard to get people to take this survey unbiasedly.
It's a very small town for those of you that aren't actually in Salida, that are watching from outside. Mm-hmm. It's a very small town. Everybody knows everybody. Everyone's on a school board or some board with their neighbor whose cousin is everybody knows everybody.
Yes. They said that nearly 60% of the surveyed thought that Barry Morphew was guilty and wouldn't change their mind. So that was, that just goes to show, according to the defense, that a lot of people in this town either know about the case and already have made a decision as to who did the crime.
Yeah.
Again, Barry Morphew is just accused. He has not been found guilty by a jury. Mm-hmm. So he has remained innocent since we spoke to him, since, she went missing in May of 2020. And even now, since his arrest and since he's been let out on bond, he's maintained his innocence. So he's just saying that the defense is just saying that their findings of nearly 60% of the people that they surveyed found or thought that Barry Morphew was guilty and wouldn't change their mind just shows just how much media attention and publicity that this case has brought. They said that this community has been invested in this case. There's banners all around town. We still see missing posters of Suzanne. And they talk a little bit about there's like a Christmas tree that memorializes Suzanne. They said if the community was bigger, then the media would be less saturated. And they said we just can't get around that.
Because you guys got to realize our station is in Colorado Springs, which is about 2.5 hours away from Salida. So we're covering it, as well as all the other local stations and our market. stations up in Denver are covering it. So it's not just the local newspaper in Salida that's talking about it. It's a lot of stations across Colorado.
Mm-hmm. And they also, when the defense was talking about this, they talked about how the DA's comments could impact from all the places that she spoke on, like the podcast, the YouTube, with us, the press conference, that it could sway potential jurors. And, she said that even in this community, before she became the DA, part of her campaign was to solve cold cases. Mm-hmm. And they talked a lot about just the media attention since Suzanne went missing. And at one point, Iris Eaton held up like a 3-ring binder and said, like, this is just the local news clippings. And she said from Mountain Mail to Fox 21. And it was like, I'm serious, it was like this this thick of papers. Then she talked about specifics in the media as far as, like, they only took out the salacious parts of the AA, the arrest affidavit, and aired it. And that they continually fueled the this interest in this case. And they believe that, the Morphew family has been seen in this community as a spectacle. And that they can't even walk around town, and that this place for Barry Morphew, Barry Morphew's trial would just be unfair to have it in Chaffee County. And she said that, there's many other counties in the state that would be better. Iris Eaton even went on to say, like, the defense counsel said that, like, every Sunday, each church in the town prays for Suzanne, and it's a beautiful thing, but it's not good to find an impartial jury.
Yeah. Some other people in the comments are saying, other big cases, even just outside of Colorado.
Let me get to that.
Okay.
It made me mad at one point, and I don't get mad, like, easily. She even said, like, they don't want to get to a trial and then, like, a few, like, weeks in, they need to change the venue and it's going to cost the taxpayers all this money or whatever. So I believe it was the prosecutors that brought up the James Holmes case, where, if you're not familiar with it, it was the Aurora Theater shooting case.
Oh, yes.
Where it was like, it was such a big case that it was such national news that it didn't matter where the trial was going to be held, because
you all know mass shootings are covered by everybody. It's not just local stations.
And this was like the first of a theater. Like,
yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of people. It was like a dozen people who died. Yeah. And the defense rebutted and responded to that and was like, this case is bigger than that case. And I don't know, that just frustrated. I helped, or I covered that case a little bit when I was an intern in Denver, and speaking to, no mass shooting, no murder is who one, like, I just felt like that comment was really, like, one-upping. You know what I mean? Like, well, this case, more important than 12 other people dying. Yeah, I was just like, whoa. Anyways, I got a little off track.
But people were just saying, like, other big cases have had no problem going to other counties and handling their trials, so why can't this one?
Mm-hmm. And the defense also said, like, 90% of this community in Chaffee County knows this case, and would make the case problematic to try it in Chaffee County, is what the defense is trying to explain to the court.
I feel like if they looked really hard, they could find 12 people that don't know anything.
As far as, like, the people that are from Salida and Chaffee County, there's only, like, less than 5 people in the courtroom. there's not that much interest of people coming to the courtroom. Yeah. But the defense also said, the Morphews want this to go to trial, and they don't want a delay, and they'd rather have to do this trial once than twice, if that makes sense.
Someone said to look for the old people in a nursing home.
In a nursing home?
Well, they don't have TVs or cell phones and stuff. They wouldn't know what's happening in the world.
Yeah. Oh, see, look in my notes. She said this.
I saw that.
It was way worse. I was like, no. And I don't know. Oh, maybe the defense then came back on that statement and was like, you can't compare them. The state has to prove that Suzanne Morphew is dead and that Barry Morphew did it. The defense said, it's the best track to have it elsewhere to keep this trial on track, is what they said. While the prosecution was wanting this to be held here in this county because they believe it's where the crime was committed and they want the people to decide. At the end of the day, the judge said he was not ready to prepare to make a ruling on the change of venue motion. The prosecution did mention that this has not only garnered local attention by the media and state attention, it's national attention. They mentioned the 48-hour special that just happened. When was that? Saturday night?
Yeah.
Saturday night, yeah. And it's a nationwide interested case that people want to know about. People have asked us, is the trial going to be publicized and broadcast? And we don't know at this point. Right now, I can't even tweet, even though I can't even have my phone in the courtroom.
You can't even bring it into the building. They make you put it in a locker. Can't even sit in the hallway with it.
Yes. Which is crazy because other people in the courtroom can. But I won't mention any names.
People that shouldn't have phones.
Yes. Anyways.
Shouldn't be allowed to.
Well, we've talked for a long time. What questions can we answer before we go to bed? The spy pin. What's the question about the spy pin? Sorry. Can you furthermore that question? Can you elaborate? So, if you're wondering when we will learn if the trial will be held here in Chaffee County or if it will be held in a different county in Colorado, we hope to learn on February 1st.
Someone was asking
the next time Barry Morphew will be in court. Sorry.
Somebody was just asking if you could log into WebEx and then just do it from the office and just tweet from there.
I cannot. That's a great question.
Isn't it only family?
It is only direct family members have access to WebEx as well as attorneys. But I don't know if they had it on today on WebEx because of what happened yesterday. Someone hacked into the WebEx yesterday, so they shut it down.
Stopped it real quick.
They stopped it. Yeah.
Were the Mormons in WebEx?
We can't see who's on WebEx, and the court doesn't announce who's on WebEx, so I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
Someone else was asking why this one is so secretive, whereas other ones were a lot more transparent, like other big cases, murder cases.
Great question.
I'd love to know.
Because, I also covered the Gannon Stout, Letitia Stout case in El Paso County, and a lot of those hearings, the district attorney's office has a press conference after every single one.
Yeah.
And they don't have a problem with that. I don't know.
I wonder if it's just because Salida is so small, they're not used to, they don't know how to handle a big case like this.
I don't know. And I don't know. It's a great question, though. Does the new judge seem to take notice the new strategy of putting Linda Stanley on trial? Putting Linda Stanley on trial? Linda Stanley is not on trial. Someone's asking if they'll allow, like, court TV to air it live. I'm sure us media people will, you know, request that, but we could be denied.
AK found a letter about something?
I don't know about the letter.
Somebody said he found it in a parking lot.
Maybe someone can send me the letter that they're talking about. What is it?
Somebody said I'm bummed that I missed the bowel movement chat last night.
Oh my god. It's Letitia pretending to be incompetent.
That's hilarious.
Is Letitia Stout pretending to be?
That's a whole...
That's a whole nother. She, I believe, is in the state hospital getting reviewed right now.
Oh yeah,
because we were supposed to have a hearing. I think it was last week. She'll be actually in court the 27th, and I'll probably be in court the 27th for that. That's Thursday. So I'll be covering that. Yeah. So who's allowed in the courtroom? Anyone? Someone is asking. That's a great question.
Yes and no.
Yeah. So they always let in, obviously, a couple media people in first, and then any family members, and then anyone that gets in line first. And they pretty much let the public come in until all the seats are filled. And then once the seats are filled, they won't let anyone else in.
It's first come, first serve on that basis.
Fox 21 needs to request it. We will. We will. Because it would be great to just live stream it. And so then I don't have to tweet. And then I could just focus on my notes and then my reports instead of having to live tweet, focus on my notes, and come up with scripts and things like that. How many seats are people asking? How many seats would you think?
For the public or just in general?
During the prelim, there was only like 8 seats for the public.
Yeah. The courtroom is not that big.
Well, and we had to do COVID.
Yeah.
Protocol. So we were like 6 feet apart or 3 feet apart.
So in a row that could normally probably fit 5 or 6 people, you could only fit 3. So that limited it. As well as during the hearing, Barry had a lot more family there. Like obviously his mom, his sister, you know, maybe a brother-in-law or something like that. So that also took up more space. But obviously they haven't been showing up for the last few days. So that's opened up a few more seats for the public or more media.
I will say that this judge, compared to Judge Patrick Murphy, he's been lenient about spacing. Because I spoke with, I think it was a Good Morning America producer, and we were comparing our like quotes from Barry Morphew, and they didn't say anything. Compared to like Patrick Murphy, he was like on it when someone's, you know, mask was like below their nose. He would stop the court proceeding and be like, "Hey, you got to put your mask back up."
So to answer your question, yes, you have to wear a mask in the courthouse at all times.
Yes.
There's nothing going on tomorrow.
Yeah, so that is an interesting question because the defense wanted to continue it tomorrow because we all were looking outside and how like blizzardy it was getting. And so it looked like the defense, most of them are from Denver. So they're traveling from Denver to come to Chaffee County to cover this for Barry Morphew. And so it sounded like they wanted to cover some of the motions that didn't get covered today, tomorrow. But with the judge's schedule, it just didn't work out. So no court tomorrow.
Someone was asking why Judge Murphy isn't on this case anymore.
So he recused himself, was it last month?
I want to say, yeah. Sounds right.
Or the beginning of this month? It was recent.
Yeah.
And it was because he is a family friend to another attorney who works for the firm that
is representing Shoshona
is representing Shoshona Darkey, who is a witness in this case.
So it was just too many connections that could have created a conflict of interest.
It was like a long... No, I have not heard that the $100,000 was from the family of one of the girls' boyfriends. I have not heard that. It's like a long question.
Yeah, it was down there.
Oh, did I skip it? Sorry. I hope that was it. Oh, it's just this comment. I thought it was a question. Sorry. Keep the questions coming. We'll do like 3 more minutes of it. Oh, look it. Someone says, I live in a senior living and I have a smart TV and an iPhone and all of my friends use their iPods.
Someone else suggested that.
Or iPads,
I was just
sorry.
reading a comment.
So there you go. Oh, shoot. What did I do? And even if the judge does decide to have, like, for this trial to be somewhere else, there hasn't been any mention of, like, what county or what jurisdiction that would be.
Yeah.
Just
also,
so people know that.
Also, too, even if they move it to a different county, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be a bigger venue either. It's just so they can find somewhere where they can get a unbiased jury from. So it could be the same size.
A bigger pool of jurors, too.
Yeah. It could be the same size as the courtroom they're in now. It could be bigger. It could be smaller. They're just trying to find a location where the entire city doesn't know what's going on.
Someone says show is a no-show.
That is true.
Why isn't the focus on Suzanne anymore? Great question.
Have you heard if they've done any more searches or anything?
Not since winter started.
Yeah.
They've kind of been hush-hush on that.
Yeah.
I mean, talking to family members, they've told me that, yeah, investigators have told them that they are still searching. But as far as where and how long they've been searching, I don't know.
No, you don't have to pay for parking.
Nope. Someone says, love me some seniors. Me too.
Dude,
I
love the seniors.
Yeah.
They're great. They're so nice. They got great stories.
Yeah.
They've lived some interesting lives.
That's for sure.
You got Woodstock. You got the 70s. It's great times. Do you think it'll start in May?
Great question. So one of the motions that has not been talked about is the length of the trial. And,
wasn't it initially 4 weeks is what they said?
No, it was initially 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And the defense wants it to be 4 weeks.
That's what it was.
And the defense wants it to start at the end of April and not in May. They want it to be pushed up a week. And that motion hopefully will be talked about on February 1st, as well as the possible change of venue, and Joseph Cahill, the former CBI agent, is supposed to take the stand on February 1st.
Gotcha.
He's subpoenaed until then.
Gotcha.
Any more questions? Let's answer one more question.
Give us your best one.
It better be a good one.
Better blow our minds. Makes us really think.
Come on.
I love all you seniors.
We love you, Kara.
There's no hate here. We love you all.
I don't think they have like a strict, like, Barry Morphew's family can have this many seats, and Suzanne Morphew's family can have this many seats. Suzanne Morphew's family has not come to a court hearing yet. They mostly live out of state and have not made an appearance in court yet. So they haven't seen Barry Morphew since he's been arrested. Someone says, can the family not just assign me WebEx? That would be nice, but no.
Yes, I have watched the new season of Ozark.
Hey, and if people are ever
great.
wondering if I'm not in the courtroom, but I'm tweeting and getting information, it was because I have sources and people were sending me information. So there you go.
We're still legit.
Are they still searching scene? I believe they're still searching. Okay. Should we end it? We didn't have a grip. Should we end? Yeah. How much will the DNA in her car impact this?
It's been a big topic of conversation.
Yes.
So I feel like it'll be pretty big when the trial
There's
starts.
a lot of loose ends that they need to,
Yeah. I think it'll really
work
depend
on
on if they can get a confirmed something from the DNA. If it's still up in the air and they don't know who it is or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if they can lock in a person that has an alibi that can 100% cross them off from any possibility of being here on May 10th, I feel like at least that portion of the DNA, because I know there's some now in the house and stuff, but at least on the Range Rover it could.
And you got to still remember, like, we haven't seen the telematics from the Bobcat or Suzanne's Range Rover.
Yeah.
Like, we've only heard that evidence of Barry Morphew's truck, his cell phone records, Sheila Oliver's cell phone records, like communication from Jeff Libler and you know, things like that. So it's like, there's still a lot of pieces of evidence in this case that we have not.
Because the preliminary hearing, even though we heard a lot, there's still a lot more they didn't go into depth on with for. Whatever that word is.
All right, it's been a long day. It's been a long couple of days for us.
We're losing our minds. It's been fun.
Thank you all, gracious people, for joining us tonight on this episode of Lauren and Sarah Talk About Barry Morphew. Anyways, we were tired. We were going to go to bed. Again, you know, Suzanne Morphew, on a serious note, she's still missing. Please keep thinking of her. Please keep Suzanne Morphew, Barry Morphew's family in your thoughts and prayers.
If you hear anything, whether you think it's small or not, let somebody know.
Not just let someone know, let, you know, law enforcement, CBI. There's still a tip line. It's still open. You can still call it. Let me just pull that up so I can actually tell people the number before, you know, calling it a night. Hold on. Okay, that number to call if you hear of any, and again, any tip, small, big, is super important. So please, please, please call 719, oh wait, just kidding. Oh, yeah, that's right. 719-312-7530. That is a specific tip line for Suzanne Morphew. We need to.
And if you didn't get that number, it's on the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office Facebook page.
Yes.
So for all you seniors with your smartphones, you know where to look.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.